The Hydra Sorceress is sadly a fairly maligned build, and has been since they introduced the casting delays, but it also stands to be one of the more improved builds whenever version 2.4 releases, even if they only follow through with the bare minimum changes they mentioned in the announcement stream. So this makes it one of the most important builds to show in terms of before and after the patch. Let's first mention why it's not very popular, and that's basically that due to its casting delay, Hydra conflicts with other delay-based spells that would work well with it, like Frozen Orb, as well as prevent any ability to really get it to burst up in damage, which puts it at a distinct disadvantage to other heavier hitting spells like Meteor or Blizzard. Heck, even Fireball, thanks to being spammable, will usually let you burst out more damage more efficiently against groups of enemies, even if you built yourself as a Hydra Sorceress before even ever using it. The main advantage of Hydra, though, is the same advantage as traps, and that is the scouting and corner shot advantage. Basically, you can place it in rooms or on the edge of the screen and hit enemies far before any of them can target you, even Gloams. And on top of that, unlike traps, your resist penetrations and masteries do fully apply to your Hydras, so you can guarantee more of your damage going through. The anticipated change to Hydra, even if they don't adjust the damage, will actually fix both major problems with it by getting rid of, or at least greatly reducing the casting delay. It will allow the skill to become much more bursty, letting you deal its damage faster, and it will reduce or remove its conflict with other casting delay spells, letting you juggle them much more efficiently. The other major change they mentioned, as a bit of a counterbalance, was to set a limit on the number of Hydras active at once, kind of like is done with traps, so you might be limited to 5 or 6 of them at a time, but you can bring them to bear much quicker. Now with that said, we do need a base build to compare to it, and frankly most of the Hydra builds on various websites are complete ass because it's not a popular build. So we'll need to do some thinking outside the box, mainly what skill to combine with it to deal with fire immunes, and also what level of gear we'll need to make it viable. The gear part is pretty easy since most of the good shield options for it are going to be Monarch or higher strength. So we'll kit out our strength for that, and since we want to survive a bit, we'll put the rest into vitality since, honestly, we won't have to invest hardly any points into energy because we're not going energy shield, and the skills we're using have almost no chance of running us out of mana. Support skill-wise, we need something that takes minimal points, since to make Hydra good, we need 20 points in Hydra, 20 points in Firebolt and Fireball for synergies, and 20 points into Fire Mastery. This means we're running pretty slim on remaining points, not even enough for Nova, so the only reasonable option will be Orb, since it can run just fine on Vapors and plus skills, with minimal mastery points, and still kill stuff in Hell fairly easily. With our equipment set up, we don't need that point in Cold Mastery, but I went ahead and put it in there in case I wanted to try out an alternative weapon choice, but ended up being happy with it as is, so that would be another point into Frozen Orb as well, but basically we get the 1 point in Mastery and then the rest into Frozen Orb. Now, you've probably already guessed on my overly cliche mercenary by the green around his feet. That's right, Infinity, and we tossed it on a Holy Freeze mercenary for a little bit of extra slow to make life easier on our Hydras, even against cold immunes. The Infinity is there because it actually can break a decent number of fire immunes, not as easily as lightning, but easy enough nonetheless. Armor and helmet is just Fortitude and Vampire's Gaze, but you could go with any source of resists and leech. On ourselves, this is where we deviate a bit from the common tendencies of online builds, and that is because while we want plus skills, we also want to pierce that resist even more, since with Conviction we want to be pushing non-immunes to as close to negative 100% as we possibly can, and we want to make it so our Hydras can do reasonable damage to immunes that have been broken. Since Hydras thankfully do benefit from it, which is a good thing, and I'm going to keep pressing that point each and every chance I get, since even though each Hydra spawn does about 4,000 per head, which is 12,000 per volley, we need to get through the fire resist to get that amount of damage out. To get that minus resist, we actually eat up 4 of our equipment slots, the first 3 being Talrosh's Amulet, Belt, and Orb, which gives us a grand total of +3 all skills, plus to each of our masteries, and a fairly nice minus 15% enemy fire resist. The 4th item is actually a Phoenix Shield, which gives us another minus 28% fire resist and gives us a rather nice redemption aura, which even further secures our mana and life from dropping. This gives us minus 43% total on top of Conviction's minus 85%, which means most non-immunes will be heavily negative, and most immunes that are broken will end up around 50 to 60% resist, which we can deal decent damage to. We also want to do something similar with Orb, so we threw on Nightwing's Veil since it brings +2 all skills as well as boosting cold skill damage, which works well with our cold mastery to help Orb do decent damage despite being minimally invested into. Beyond that, we want to just rack up those plus skills through charms, Stone of Jordan rings, chains of honor, armor to help shore up our resist somewhat, because they're going to be kind of weak with this, since we don't really need to worry about faster cast outside of having bare minimum to make teleport tolerable in case we want to use it, which we did get one value point in for boss running, but it's mostly just for convenience and not entirely necessary if you're going to be going after some walkable areas. Beyond that, Mage Fist will just give us a bump to our fire skills, and we just went with War Travelers for a bit of magic find as well. Nothing too special, nothing out of the ordinary, this is just general caster gloves and boots. As far as the playstyle with this, for the most part I just went super chill using Frozen Orb on my left click and Hydra on my right click, and things went down fairly smoothly even though I was listening to some language immersion videos while recording the background footage. If you wanted to play more actively, you could use Fireball between Hydra or Orb cast to maximize your DPS, but Hydras with this setup will generally shred most big targets fast enough that static isn't even necessary, and you can spam Orb against fire immunes fast enough that mid-cast Fireball would almost be a waste as well. Overall, currently it's nothing compared to the Fireball Orb Sorceress's speed and power, but I think with some of the changes proposed for 2.4, this could potentially start competing with things like my Lazy Bones Poison Necromancer for just having a chill farming variant that doesn't really have to get super actively involved in things, thanks to the much more mobile Hydra options.